exactly right, Mayor.
Clint Eastwood in Halftime in America.
Exactly.
Well, this is a very interesting sort of trajectory of the conversation, because again, in D.C., and frankly in state capitals and city halls, the conversation tends to be very programmatic, right? What are we going to do on tax? What are we going to do on workforce? What are we going to do on land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And what we're describing here is a culture shift,
Right.
where we begin to dignify work again, and we begin to talk about craftsmanship again. I mean, one of the most interesting things I see around the country, two things actually, is high schools that are beginning to bring back what we used to call vocational ed. We now call career and technical services. So you can go into some inner city high schools where we're teaching manufacturing because of the the wage effects you're describing. The other interesting.
By the way, one of the things that John mentioned that I think is working extremely well in some parts of Ohio, not as well in others, is where business partners with a high school. So instead of partnering with a community college or a university, at the high school level, bringing kids in, internships, co-ops, showing them, manufacturing can be cool. There's a company in Cleveland, Graph Tech, that is doing this with a public high school in the Cleveland area, and they indicate to me that it's working both to get these kids more excited about the STEM disciplines, but also to actually, develop a workforce. So these kids then do go on, get a 2-year degree, end up coming back to the school, and the whole time they're interning or working in the summer and so on. So I think there's an opportunity there for companies to get engaged at a relatively young level.
And for a kid to see what a job is.
What a job is, absolutely.
Our country and our communities are now those that have educational supports and are connected, and those that don't have educational supports and are disconnected. And this side over here is getting bigger every day. And they may not even know what a job is. So for some of our summer job programs, for instance, this mentoring aspect that we introduce people to, young kids to, that may not have been out of 1 mile radius of where they lived before, to see what an office looks like and what social skills are required to get a job. We can't get so caught up here that we forget that we got a whole group of our society right now that doesn't understand some of these basic work issues that we're talking about. It's a big national issue.
So let me bring this up, because again, I think the adding of a culture shift is critical, or else we'll make all the policy reforms in the world and we're still going to deal with a perception of manufacturing, which is not accurate, but is still deeply held in our country. A couple other issues that were raised by some of the prior panels I thought would be good to air here, since we have a lot of work going on. Energy. Okay, so the notion that the United States can have cheap, reliable, predictable energy as a platform for manufacturing is an enormous shift. But we've got some really hairy environmental issues to deal with. How do we do this? How do we get beyond the polarization, not just partisan polarization, but the real concerns that people have about environment in Ohio or in other parts of the...
Yeah, I'll tell you, in Ohio it's really exciting, as you know, because we have these new shale finds, and in the West, they're used to having these natural gas and oil finds periodically. In Ohio, we're again becoming a producer of natural gas and oil, and we're actually going to be a net exporter, we believe, in the next decade. And it's a huge opportunity for jobs. By the way, specifically manufacturing jobs, because we make a lot of pipe. So V&M Star is expanding, a new steel mill in Youngstown, Ohio.
Right.
It used to be a steel capital. U.S. Steel is expanding in Northeast Ohio as well. We also make pumps, and we also, make other structural steel for the platforms and so on. So there's huge opportunity here. And I do think the environmental issues can be handled. I'm on the Energy Committee, as you said. We work a lot with this because we're so interested in making sure that the fracking, the hydraulic fracking, can be successfully done and that it is properly regulated. John mentioned earlier fracking water, being sure it doesn't get into the groundwater and so on. The companies that have been doing this for 50, 60 years are good at it, and they've dealt with a lot of these issues. Ohio happens to have pretty good regulations in place. Maybe some states need to work on that. But I think there's an enormous opportunity here, and I don't frankly see that there is a huge disconnect here between what the communities want and what the industry wants when it's done in a safe and in a way with a regulatory environment that requires them to do it in an appropriate way. So I think it's a great opportunity, and specifically for manufacturing, not just the extraction of the resources, but for Ohio, it's great for us.
But it is